According to a recent report, there seems to be some headway when it comes to women representation in government and in some professions like chartered accountants as well as attorneys. Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed entities, however, still have some inroads to make and reflect as the least equal across all industries. These are just some of the findings by the Businesswomen Association of South Africa, which launched the South African Women in Leadership Census Report for 2021. For more on this, I'm joined by Ms. Kunyalala Maphisa, who is president of the Businesswomen Association of South Africa. Ms. Maphisa, welcome to the Daytime Update. Great to have you with us today. Give us an idea of the scope of this survey and how long you, as the Businesswomen Association, have actually been conducting surveys of this nature.
Thank you so much, Tammy, and good afternoon to your listeners. The BWA has been conducting this survey since 2004, and the scope of the research basically looks at companies that are listed on the JSE. We are looking at the professional services firms. We are looking at state-owned enterprises, and we also do a comparative element of the study with the public service in order to gauge the rate of upward mobility within the private sector against the public sector. We have also, for the past couple of reports, been also looking at women in leadership positions within higher education institutions. So it's quite a wide-ranging research report. And the great thing about the report is that it's also an actual head count. It's not a sample survey where we look at and then extrapolate a position or extrapolate a percentage from that. It's actually an actual head count of women that sit on CEO positions, chairpersons, board directors, and executive managers within those institutions.
Now, we know that the government has had a goal of having 50% parity as far as gender representation is concerned. They haven't quite reached that target, but are pretty much close to that, coming second after the SOEs, actually coming first as far as representation is concerned at 43.5%, but still not meeting that 50% target. What have been found as to be the reasons for this?
And I think that a research report such as this is what then allows us to start engaging on exactly that question, the reasons for that, because the government has been talking about 50-50 representation for the longest time, but even they have not gotten to that to that position. So I think that the issue becomes we need to then have a conversation around what is taking so long, what is holding us back for us to be able to reach the targets that we have set in place.
What we see here are JSE-listed companies coming right at the bottom with 26.9% of women in positions of leadership. Talk to us about that, as well as a summary of which are the sectors that were most progressive as far as women in leadership is concerned.
I think, yes, the JSE, for some reason, the numbers have not really, changed much. I mean, if you look at the progression of numbers from 2004 to 2021, yes, when you look at it in terms of hard numbers, the jump is pretty high. I mean, you're talking about 4.9 women CEOs in 2004 to about 17% now, or executive women managers at 14% and now at 29%. So there has been some incremental change, but it's just not enough. And I think that we, as the Businesswomen Association, and certainly along with all our other partners that we work with in this work, one of the things that we are increasingly becoming clear on is the fact that unless there is some regulatory system that regulates this, companies such as JSE-listed companies have no incentives for, at least that's what we find. They don't seem to think that this is something that they should take into account, because back in the day, I think one of the arguments that we got often was the fact that perhaps there's not enough women that have got the capacity to be able to hold whatever positions. But increasingly, we are finding that that is actually not necessarily the case. So then it becomes an issue of, is there a willingness, or if it's not If it's not a case of they are not willing, then what is it that we need to be doing in order to make sure that the numbers start moving?
Talk us about the performance of women in leadership in state-owned entities. That just came after business, or rather came after national government.
I think that the state-owned enterprises, they also they are doing a little bit better, I guess, because I mean the government's imperative in terms of 50-50 representation is something that they have been consistent in. But again, it's still something that we are talking about as a goal in the future. And even though the numbers within state-owned enterprises are so much better as compared to women in the private sector, it's still not good enough if we are looking at all the promises that have been made to date.
If we look at institutions of higher learning, they came third with 38.9%, but they also showed themselves to be one of the most progressive sectors within a specific period of time. When we talk about women in academia or women in institutions of higher learning, the likes of Professor Phakeng, for example, come to mind. Talk to us about that.
I think that for us, the women in higher education certainly was an interesting finding in terms of the statistics that we came across in doing our research, and it's quite encouraging. And I mean, when you're talking specifically about Professor Phakeng at UCT. If you look at UCT, is one of the most progressive institutions in the country in as far as women representation is concerned. Because when you are talking about UCT, you've got the chancellor is a woman, the vice chancellor is a woman, the chairperson of council is a woman, and most of the council committees are also headed by women. So it's been quite an eye opener in terms of just us getting to understand the fact that women within higher education seem to be doing that much so much better. But the other finding that we have is also the fact that women in professional services firms seems to be doing a lot better than other sectors, particularly as against JSE-listed companies. So I guess the question then becomes it's an issue of trying to make an assessment of what is it that makes it interesting for women to be in higher positions within those institutions as opposed to on the JSE, which is still at the bottom of the food chain in that respect.
Ms. Kunyalala Maphisa, President of the Businesswomen Association of South Africa, thank you very much for that conversation, highlighting the role and the progress that women are making in positions of leadership across different sectors. As you mentioned a little bit earlier on, surveys of this nature help them to further inform policy and also to delve deeper into the reasons why women are not progressing as they should and as the objectives are, specifically for government. She is from the Businesswomen Association of South Africa.